First it was cortisol, now it's dopamine. Let's talk about the Gen Z concept of a dopamine menu and what that really means for your stress-busting team. Should food be a part of it, and how big of a role should it play? All of this and more in today's episode of the Case Specific Podcast. We are now rolling into the social media react portion of the podcast, which is essentially where we take something that is trending on social media, big and flashy in the headlines, and we break it down as two dietitians. And so today, as the resident Gen Z dietitian of the company, it is my lovely honor to ask you, have you heard of a dopamine menu?
No.
And so I will read you the definition of a dopamine menu.
I have a feeling what it is, but I've not heard that phrase before. Please.
A dopamine menu is a personalized, written list of healthy, rewarding activities designed to boost dopamine levels, improve focus, and combat boredom. It helps you intentionally select stimulating, productive activities instead of relying on junk dopamine like endless social media scrolling. So Gen Z is now scheduling their joy. They're scheduling their self-care, which can be a really productive thing. And it's something, as dietitians, we talk about. You need to take the time to schedule those self-care, stress-busting moments into your life instead of waiting till the end of the day and going, what am I going to do to de-stress? And so I would love to break it down from a nutrition perspective and how a dopamine menu can be part of a stress-busting team.
I love that. I think first thing that people would need to do is what I will call a dopamine audit. And
we're just adding terms.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. A dopamine audit.
A dopamine audit.
Add it to your list.
Or even an outlet audit. And so let's first talk about like what dopamine is, because that's the problem is you're going to get a whole bunch of people that like know just enough to be dangerous, and they're going to misrepresent this. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in our brain, and it is what drives a sense of like positivity and euphoria. It is what cocaine spikes at a 100x level for 15 minutes. So like euphoria, that is dopamine at its core. It is our reward. So anytime you've ever like said like, yes, and you've been super amped and super excited and super charged up human, high dopamine state. Dopamine is finite, which is to say we do not have unlimited amounts. The absence of dopamine when you crash is what most people call burnout. It is what David Kahneman, who Nobel Prize winner, writer of Thinking Fast and Slow, calls ego depletion, which is when you have no dopamine, your ability to prioritize self and have self-care is at zero. So, dopamine is an important thing, and it's good to monitor your relationship with it, especially in a high stimulus, constantly engaged society where dopamine gets used and burnt and borrowed and transacted regularly. And ADHD, whether it's an actual like legitimate diagnosis or an overstimulated person that is, as a result of being overstimulated, is thinking they have ADHD, they're likely in a hyper-dopamine state because high levels of dopamine can create like kind of a chaotic, frenzied thing, which is why I mentioned the cocaine. Like you being on cocaine is like not useful or conducive long-term, right? And so that's where a lot of people that like have like subclinical ADHD, as you might say, they don't actually have ADHD. They are dealing with being pulled a million different directions by a million different stimuli all at once. And their body is trying to compensate with that by raging up their dopamine, and that burns them out. And so then they go from like basically varied focus to like burnt out non-focus, and then back and forth and back and forth. So dopamine, there are two ways to spike your dopamine. You can either borrow it from the future or you can make more. Those are the only two ways. So right now, if my dopamine, let's use an easy number. Say I'm chilling right now. I'm a pretty happy, charismatic, peppy dude. Say my dopamine's a 3 out of 10 right now, right? I'm not raging. I'm not out there getting after it, but I'm definitely in a happy mood. So dopamine 3 out of 10. I can either do something to intentionally, temporarily spike my dopamine to a 10. Cocaine would be a very excessive version of that. Adderall and those medications all fall into that category. Gambling is a dopamine spike.
Scrolling on TikTok is a dopamine spike.
Scrolling gives you a hit, really. And then there's a couple others that we could, point at, but what I'll say is most of the things that are associated with negative coping mechanism, high sugar foods, like super caloric, like like what we'll call like a big treat meal, also a dopamine spike, all of those things. What's worth noting is a lot of the things that we say are like bad for you or they're not outlets, but they're vices. So if you're going to think about like what's a vice, it is something that charges your dopamine in the moment by pulling dopamine from tomorrow. And the way you know that's true is because you crash. Yep. And so if you have something that makes you feel really up and then it's followed in the basically the next 36 hours by like a lower than normal low. So if you go to +10 to go to -10, that is a negative dopamine reality. That is a dopamine borrowing behavior. Most vices are dopamine borrowing. And where that becomes problematic is when you hit that low, guess what you do? You hit that dopamine button again and again and again, which is where the concept of addiction comes from. Yep. Is dopamine up feels good, dopamine withdrawal feels bad, double up on the thing to try and get it back up, which makes it false up ×2, and then it crashes ×2, and then you end up chasing the thing. And so you end up in a reality where you start doing something at 10x the quantity and it causes neutral, and you're like, it doesn't even do anything for me anymore. You've created such a dopamine debt that you can't do enough to actually get your dopamine up. That is a terrible way to live.
Yep. And the way I think about it is going back to the scrolling on social media, you at the end of the night are laying in bed decompressing from your day and you're scrolling on TikTok and you're watching funny videos and you're scrolling to find the next one and the next one and the next one. It's kind of like when you're playing the slot machine. Like when you're scrolling, you're trying to find that video that's going to hit, the one that's going to make you laugh, that you're really going to like. Same thing with hitting the win on a slot machine. And then you're in bed and you're scrolling on TikTok for 2 hours. And in the moment you're thinking, why am I doing this? I could be reading my book. I could be doing so many other things, but you keep scrolling. And in the morning and you wake up, you're super tired because you stayed up all night. You wake up feeling tired and crappy, and that's that low. And then the next day, you're like, well, I'm super tired and I'm exhausted. I'm going to go sit on the couch and I'm going to watch TV with my second screen in my hand. And I'm going to keep scrolling on Instagram while I have a show on in the background. And that's how I feel like that's where a lot of our Gen Z population is at right now, where we're feeling a lot of guilt for just the continual phone addiction.
Yeah, it's that constant that constant stim. And does that pulse your dopamine? Yes, but is it investing in your baseline? No. And so let's now shift gears, because a way to think about it is, let's say I start my day every day with 10 dopamine, but I live a very busy life and my life costs 12 dopamine. I am going to start looking for ways to get to 12 dopamine. And there are the short-term ones, like we talked about, the scrolling, like the little excitements, the novelties, all of that kind of stuff. Those will temporarily boost you, but they cost you tomorrow. And so today you suddenly have 15, which feels great, but then tomorrow you have 8, and so you feel worse, and you have to double down on the thing to get to 15 again. And over time you burn out. There are 3 ways to actually make new dopamine. So going from someone who has a baseline of 8 to a baseline of 12, not borrowing from the future. The first one is exercise. Exercise makes dopamine.
What kind?
All types. Every single one of them. They are all dopamine creating. Consistent movement is one of the single easiest ways. The other 2 are basically built in the concept that humans are wired to connect. We are a communal species, right? That is why we are, even though we are always bickering, we are better together than apart. That is just true. It is how we are wired. The book Wired to Connect, great read for anybody that's a super nerd like me. But a stimulating, engaged conversation makes dopamine. And so this is where this gets important. You going and spending some time with a close friend or family member or small group that you really enjoy and having a really compelling conversation is a dopamine charge, right? You going and hanging out with a bunch of people at surface level is a novel dopamine experience that crashes. You going out and being social when you don't have the capacity to do so is a drain. And so there are social realities that are draining and charging. And what I'll note is, same comment. How do I know? Well, afterwards, how do you feel? Are you going home like a zombie and you disappear for 16 to 24 hours? Or are you going home feeling alive and electric? And then the next day, do you feel a better baseline? And so a compelling, engaging conversation. And then the other one I'll note is actual intimacy. And where this one gets misrepresented is a lot of people think sex. And that's where sex on its own is a dopamine spiking experience, the novelty of it, the excitement of it. But hookup culture does not provide baseline increases in dopamine. It provides temporary, which is why apps and all of that kind of stuff do not actually create a happier human, right? Tinder and Hinge are not largely going to make you happier long term. They create this weird swiping reality where it's more novelty, more novelty, more novelty, and it eventually crashes and burns on you. But having a romantic partner that you're having intimacy with, which is to say you're truly engaging emotionally and spiritually and intellectually, and then you choose to engage physically after that type of event, like a true, like we'll call it like a really quality date night out together, that is another dopamine creating experience. And so what's tricky about dopamine creation versus dopamine borrowing is they're usually on the edge of one another. Right? Like the difference between intimacy and sex is a real weird line that a lot of people struggle to walk. The difference between engaging conversation and like flagrant socialization is also a really tricky line to walk, right? The difference between moving your body and feeling grounded in your physical being and beating the living shit out of your body are not the same thing, but they can feel like the same thing. And so that's what's hard is dopamine creation is usually like what we'll call a balanced relationship with something, where a dopamine borrowing is basically like an amplified or excessive version of something. And that's where the concept of everything in moderation comes from, is like a little bit of alcohol can be dopamine enhancing, a lot of alcohol, dopamine crashing, a little bit of any recreational drug in theory, can be dopamine enhancing, but eventually is dopamine crashing. Little novel experiences can be dopamine enhancing, but at excess, they become dopamine crashing. And that is where the concept of a stress busting team comes from.
That's the dopamine menu.
That's a dopamine menu. Cool. So for me, for years, I've called that a stress busting team. We did a podcast on stress busting 4 years ago, something like that. A stress busting team is the observation that most things that present you with a little dopamine spike in moderation are actually quite good. It's when we overdo them that they have negative consequences. And where most people go wrong is they try and have a, like basically what we'll call like a main player, a dopamine player, if you will, a thing they go back to over and over and over again. And for some people, that's like binge eating is what that can develop into, or it's food in general, or it can be excessive food. Some people that's drinking, some people that can be social, some type people that can be some of the vices we've explored. When we hit that button too often, teams with one good player never win championships. And it's because they're not balanced enough to make it when it matters. The idea is that first, you should have a whole team. And second, the one thing you're currently abusing for somebody out there that's feeling very seen by this and is like, oh yeah, I use food as my go-to. I'm just constantly eating for momentary gratification. Food shouldn't be off the team, but it probably shouldn't be your number one player, and it probably shouldn't be your starter. It should probably be like a sixth man or a seventh man if we were going to use like a basketball analogy, and in rotation. And so it's kind of funny is the idea that, okay, snuggling with my dog gives me a dopamine reality. Having a really engaging date night out with someone that I like deeply love or care about. Having a really compelling conversation with a family member. Sharing some quiet time with someone that I like. Getting a good workout in that challenges me appropriately. These are all examples of things that should be on my team. Having a glass of wine on an evening to decompress can absolutely be on the team. Enjoying a nice meal should absolutely being on the team. Like, these are all things that can absolutely be on your team, but we need to think about, one, the bigger the team, the better. If you have 30 outlets, by the time you do one a day, you're going to not do it again for 30 days, which means you're not going to get quote unquote addicted to it. And the other comment is most people need more than one player a day. And so then you can get into dopamine bundling, which is the idea that I would much rather, and anyone who's watched this podcast or worked with me over the years has heard this analogy before. I would much rather like snuggle up with my pup after a really relaxing shower and watch an episode of something on my phone in my love sack than sit there on the couch and mindlessly watch reruns of something while I shove food in my face that I'm not aware of. Both of those are dopamine seeking behaviors, but one of them is a net enhancement and the other is a net detriment. And they're really, really seemingly similar because they do In the moment, the same thing. So I like to call one of those a +1+1. In the moment, it's a +1. In the future, it's a +1 versus a +1 -2. In the moment, it's a +1, but in the future, there's resentment, shame, feelings of guilt, and that creates a -2. And how do we fix a -2? With a +3. So you now triple the thing, and now you get +3 -6, and now you have to do a +7. And you could hear where that gets to be a narrative that gets out of hand quickly.
Yep. And to tie it all back to the dopamine menu of it all, the ADHD conversation of it all, part of this started online as a tool for people with ADHD to find productive outlets. And so sometimes some of those things that were included on those lists were things that were productive. So like making your bed can also give you a little
massive
temporary hit of dopamine.
First
You got
thing I do every morning.
Nice, lovely made bed. Also doing your skincare, like it's something that is relaxing at the end of the night. You're doing your skincare, but it's also good for you and for your skin. And then also things like hobbies, reading, maybe playing a short bit of video games, maybe doing some like color by number or like those diamond art kits. And it's, again, building the team in a way that will make you feel good. Also, you have a variety of outlets to come down from your busy, stressful day, whatever that might look like for you.
Yeah.
So
that's I'm glad you touched on the accomplishment drive, which dopamine is accomplishment drive. Touching accomplishment is a really good way to do it. Obsessing over it is a really good to drain it. So once again, we can hear moderation of it, great. Excessive or drain of it, not great. And so it is. It's building the bigger team, the better. I encourage people to start a list of things that make them basically do one of three things. Make them like laugh, like a deep laugh, like that, like heart laughter. Make them go, yes, like a feeling of accomplishment, whether internally or externally, and make them go, Those three things, anything that you do in a day that makes one of those three things happen, you should start a list on an iNote, or like a little notepad on your phone. And you should start that list as a running list of your stress busting team. And anything that makes you laugh, makes you exhale, or makes you have a little moment of yes, like self-accomplishment or self-praise, make that list. The bigger that list is, the better. And then use those things intelligently. And if, like I said, all things are on the table in moderation, it's most people don't have a list. They don't have awareness. And so they're just kind of like shooting from the hip. And then they naturally start to basically go back to some of the ones that are less than ideal and very familiar. And that does not age well.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on the dopamine menu, the Gen Z trend?
Overall, I think it's aimed in the right way. I think it's just a matter of slowing it down. And the other comment I'll make is the solution to feeling ADHD style heightened symptomology is actually dopamine flushing, which is to say getting used to less dopamine. One of our bigger problems is because we're so overstimulated right now, so many things pulling at our attention. Most people don't do a single task. Most people are double tasking most of the time. You should be able to take a shower and just take a shower.
Yeah, I actually just the other day saw a video on one of my feeds, love it, of this guy who has been trying to wake up and go 30 minutes phone and stimuli free. So getting up, not checking your phone, and then also going outside and going on a walk with no headphones, no music, no nothing, just the sounds of nature. That it's been making him feel really good. And that's an example of a way you can start to flush that.
Welcome to the first 45 minutes of my day every day.
There you go. It's you.
Yeah. And that's the comment is I was definitely somebody when I was doing my 100-hour work weeks, I was overstimmed all the time. And I can attest to step one was actually learning to appreciate less stim. Having moments where I'm literally sitting there chewing and there's nothing else happening. There's no TV on, there's no music playing, there's no scrolling happening, there's no phone engagement, there's no conversation. Like enjoying a meal as a meal. That is an example. Taking a shower as a shower. Driving with the windows down, little things, getting back to like simple gratitudes. That is a dopamine flushing experience. It allows a singular thing to be more enjoyable, taking a dog walk, etc. So dopamine flushing is an important piece of it so that you can resensitize.